Diablo 4 is right around the corner, and as is tradition on this channel, it's time to go back to Diablo 3 in 2023 to see if it is as fun and as addictive as I remember. Now, I wasn't a fan of action RPGs when this game released. It was May 2012, I was 14 and had no interest in Diablo. Luckily for me though, I didn't have to deal with any of those launch day issues because everybody remembers all the stories about the errors at launch. Instead, I had Torchlight 2 pre-ordered, and that was my first real entry into this genre, and I fell in love. The constant action, loot and character building, I couldn't get enough, and Torchlight 1 and 2 and the whole Borderlands series are the reason I love this genre to this day. Cue the release of the definitive edition of Diablo 3 in 2017 on PS4, and that was my first time playing this game. And I simply couldn't get enough. I played it so much and it took me back to the days of playing Torchlight 2. And while I didn't finish it, I tested out loads of different characters and had a ball doing it. Now in 2023, after Diablo 2 Resurrected released, and I didn't really like it, and after Torchlight 3 came out, and that game was an absolute disaster. How does Diablo 3 hold up? Is it worth revisiting? I started with a Necromancer as I had never played one before, and instantly I was hooked. My first play session was going to be the first hour just before bed, just to get my feet wet. But instead, I played the game for 3 or 4 hours and I lost track of time completely. Running around, destroying scores of enemies will forever be fun regardless of the game. I mean, I even found some enjoyment in Minecraft dungeons. I appreciated just how quick it was to get into the action. Diablo 2 was obviously an older game and therefore a good bit slower, and I felt like it was hours before the action actually felt good, but within 30 minutes in Diablo 3, I had a good few abilities that made it so satisfying to play. I think the biggest triumph of this game is how well they ported it to console. This is how action RPGs should be played on console. And honestly, I just prefer sitting back on the couch and playing games than in a chair at a desk. Basically, you have a normal attack and then skills assigned to the face buttons and or 1 and 2, and it just feels natural. I don't have much experience with these games on console, but this should be the template for how they handle it because it just works. And even the inventory system is intuitive. You don't have this stupid cursor, it's all done on a radial menu. And I think Destiny and even Diablo 2 could have learned from this. And from playing the Diablo 4 beta, it seems to take a lot of notes from Diablo 3, which is really good because that's where I'm playing it. The Diablo 4 beta has ruined me though. Diablo 3 is over 10 years old now, so of course it won't look amazing, and characters here are pretty flat and so is the world. It's lacking that extra oomph that Diablo 4 brings to the table. Now this issue only crops up because I have played Diablo 4, and I can't really knock a game not looking amazing 11 years on. But what I will say is that the particle effects do look great, and that's all that matters. Unfortunately though, as much fun as I was having, I did give up when I reached roughly about level 50. I just had enough. Before I dive deeper into this, I have to preface it all by saying, I'm by no means saying this game is fun. It's still a lot of fun. And also, when it comes to the aesthetic of this game, I've always preferred sort of high fantasy or even the sort of steampunky kind of thing of Torchlight, rather than this darker fantasy that Diablo has. So where to begin? I really dislike the way you build your character in this game. I think most action RPG fans can agree that stats and numbers just click with our brains. Even though the skill might be plus 5% extra elemental damage, there's something about seeing those numbers increase that is plain and simple satisfying. And Diablo 4 strays from this. There are no skill or stat points to put into anything. Rather, all of this is done through the gear system. And I would prefer if there was a skill point system as well as gear that improves your stat. When it comes to skills, you have passive and active ones. And I will say that I liked how you can synergize these. For example, my whole build was centered around using corpses to my advantage. Whether I summoned spikes from them, blew them up, or reanimated them. And I also had a golem and his ability spawned corpses for me to use, and I just liked how it all worked together. But the only way to change a skill is by assigning one different effect to them, which again is great, but it felt rather shallow without a skill tree as well. Look, I enjoyed what they did by letting you completely augment skills, but I also want the skill tree behind it to satisfy my monkey brain. I was already playing on a high enough difficulty. I started on normal because that's how I usually review games, but it was too easy, so then I moved to hard, and then that was also too easy. So eventually after a while I was on torment difficulty, and even then it was still quite manageable. It certainly wasn't easy and I did have to watch my health, but because you get better loot at the higher difficulties, it kind of ruined the progression a bit for me, and I feel a good few action RPGs fall into this. And this was an issue that Borderlands 3 fell into. Since I was on a harder difficulty, I was getting high-end loot all the time, so it diminished the rush when one would drop. So quite quickly I had a few gold items that rendered every other piece of loot obsolete. And it is a very difficult thing to balance. How do you balance a game being too easy or too hard, but also at the harder difficulties we need to give you better loot because the game is harder. And while the gameplay loop of running around killing tens and tens of enemies and blowing enemies up is still satisfying, I think ultimately the thing that brings me back to games like this is that, oh, I need that one bit extra loot, or I just want to level up one more time so I can kind of complete my build. And Diablo 3 is sadly missing this. Now in the end game, this might all change, but for me, I play action RPGs to play through the story, maybe do a bit of post-game content, but typically I don't go too deep into them, but I still have a lot of fun. And unfortunately, Diablo 3 still is fun, but it's just lacking that extra bit that I just want. So after 10 or 15 hours, I had enough with Diablo 3. Does it hold up in 2023? Yes, it does. It's still quite fun. As I said, I do have issues with the progression, but it's still a fun game. However, the systems behind all that fun action aren't as engaging as I remembered. So if you played Diablo 3 recently, I'd be interested to see what you think about it. And also, do you have Diablo 4 pre-ordered? Because I do. Because they have me by the balls. Because yes, I gave them the extra money because I want to play the game early and make videos on it. So it's my fault. I'm part of the problem, but I'm really excited for Diablo 4. So I really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Join the Discord down below where we talk all about all sorts of games and all sorts of crap. See you all on the next video. Goodbye.